Right, we're ready for the next.
Anything further? Okay.
I think that's it.
Deborah.
Good afternoon. My name is Deborah Weinstein-Bloom. I'm the Director of Policy at Tree People, and for the few of you whose district we have not been in, if you don't know Tree People, we are a 40-year-old environmental nonprofit organization, and we have been focused on local water supply and urban greening for many, many years. So thank you for holding this hearing. I'd like to offer a slightly different view of stormwater and how to fund stormwater capture. As Tree People has long advocated that stormwater is really connected to almost all of our resource needs and our resource sectors. So when we talk about stormwater capture, we really can't just talk about stormwater. The great part about this is that it opens up new sectors to help fund everything that stormwater touches. As you'll see in the two diagrams that I hope you have on a handout, it looks like this.
Colors.
With the colors, right. When we replaced natural systems with segregated management systems in the last 2 centuries, we created infrastructure to manage each ecosystem separately. That led to inefficiencies and higher costs. However, as you can see in the diagram on the right, when we integrate our solutions, the ecological, economic, and social benefits begin to emerge. And that's what we need in this century. And managing stormwater provides the perfect opportunity to do this. And that's because green infrastructure built to manage stormwater not only creates new water sources, avoids pollution, and avoids flooding, as I think you already well know, but in addition, green infrastructure can create local jobs, reduce green waste, improve air quality, and importantly, it can actually save lives. Now that last point may sound a little dramatic, but let me explain what I mean. Tree People just returned from leading a policy delegation to Australia. We went there to see how they survived their 12-year millennium drought. One of our many key findings was that green infrastructure, specifically increased tree canopy and healthy soils, saved lives in extreme heat events that plagued the country. Australia realized that managing their stormwater in ways that promoted local water capture with green infrastructure reduced human mortality rates through evaporative cooling and by reducing the heat island effects. In fact, in the city of Melbourne, they took this concept further. They developed what they call a whole of water cycle governance structure. This is actually another concept that Tree People's been advocating for, and we're actually currently working with the Department of Water and Power, the County Public Works, and the LA City of Sanitation, 3 of the major water agencies in Los Angeles, to continue and augment their approach to water planning, funding, and implementation in a collaborative manner, of course, building on their already great work. In Melbourne, a city of 4 million, roughly the same size as the city of Los Angeles, population as the city of Los Angeles, they created an integrated governance structure covering all of their water sources, including stormwater, recycled water, groundwater, and their traditional potable water supplies. Now, we believe this concept should be taken one step further, to have a collaborative structure to provide coordination of all agencies that touch any part of the water cycle. This includes transportation, as I believe Ellen Hannock mentioned earlier, planning, energy, public health, and others. And here's the key. By doing so, there are many more funding sources and opportunities for co-investment to pay for the infrastructure, policies, and programs needed to manage stormwater. And if it's done right, it's more cost-effective and has many more benefits than costs. By the way, just building on what Marty said here about schools, schools can also benefit from this. And I would actually highly recommend that the legislature pass a bill to release schools of any liability that they fear might be imposed upon them, whether it's founded or not. I'd like to conclude with the opportunity stormwater capture provides. Tree People has worked with LADWP on the first ever stormwater capture master plan. When we began this, we really did not know how much water there would be to capture in the city of Los Angeles. DWP had already done some great projects, but we needed to determine what was possible in order to plan for the future. Well, the results are in, and I happen to think they're pretty stunning. Stormwater Capture Master Plan shows it is possible. It's not going to be easy, but it's possible that between 30 to 45% of the city's current water demands can be met through stormwater capture by the end of this century. And let me repeat that. 30 to 45% of City of Los Angeles' current water supply needs can be met through stormwater capture by the end of the century, or perhaps sooner given the right funding, etc. And if you actually look at the backside of your handout, this is a chart from the Stormwater Capture Master Plan showing the opportunity through 2099 for stormwater capture. So again, that's only if we can get the funding that's needed to build these projects that are necessary to accomplish this very laudable and needed goal. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions among members? You know, I just think that by the end of the century, it reminds me of those quotes. You know, we saw in 1913 that said in the next 10 years, all the oil is going to be gone. Jimmy Carter's quote, this quote, that quote. It's that we're always horrible predictors. I mean, first of all, I think that 300,000 acre feet, just my own prediction, I was part of the Met's 50-year plan, is going to be dramatically different. We're going to use a lot less water. We're going to take a shower with a quarter of an ounce of water compared to what we do today, right? The world's going to completely change. If you just simply use drip irrigation and all of the landscaping, you would dramatically reduce the amount of water you use. So I think that the LA City, for example, is about 550,000 acre feet. This is 300,000 acre feet. I think we're going to actually be down there. This is 100%. Secondly, I would just predict, I won't live that long, but this is going to be done in the next 20, 25 years at the latest. Because because of the stuff that's going on. I mean, you've seen the San Gabriel Valley that has 100% today. Today. This is not yesterday. This is not 99 years from now. They've met that goal with stormwater by recharging the ground basin. So I think that this is an unbelievable opportunity. The real challenge is the environmental piece. How do you make sure you get it quality and you clean up all the junk that comes off the roads and off your driveways and all that stuff, which I know you guys are doing brilliantly. But that's the bigger part of the challenge. And where's the money to come to pay for that? You know, no, nothing further? Nothing?
Nope.
Bloom for Bloom? No? Okay.
Alan.
I know, but it bloomed. What's it bloom? Thank
Senator,
you.
can I
Yes,
just
please.
want to say one thing in defense of the city of Los Angeles?
Yes.
The San Gabriel, it's not infiltrating they're not getting all of their water supply from stormwater. They're getting their water supply from groundwater.
Groundwater.
And that's an important distinction
Correct.
because they are bringing in imported water and infiltrating it, a
Correct.
lot of it. So I don't have the numbers on how much, but City of LA, I
But
think
we
is
got
doing
the
a
county
pretty
here
good
to
job.
defend that position that they told me, but we can talk about it. But the reality is it's completely doable. This is all doable, and you know, being part of the valley has just been a little frustrating because we've been really slow to it in terms of doing the cleanup. And I think there's opportunities partnering with private companies to clean stuff up earlier. The longer we wait, the bigger the plume gets. I mean, a lot of that stuff's been somewhat problematic in the last.
And the challenge is inability to predict weather patterns and the reliability of basing our water supply on snowpack,
Right.
which is not a gamble you want to do.
Okay, thank you very much. This one?
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No,
No, go ahead.
I'm-
We don't have this. Okay, next panel, emerging approaches to financing stormwater management, which has been all the panels. Okay, who do I got? Next, you got
We got Andrea. Thank
Andrea
you.
Ress. How you doing, Andrea Ress?
Why is there an O in your last name if it's Ress?
You know, you blame the German, it used to
It's
be
a German
umlaut,
thing. Got it. Just question.
Esther Feldman, Celeste, and Gary. Gary Hillman from from Public Works in the county, and so
A lot of familiar faces.
a lot of familiar faces. Okay, well, who do you want to start with? You want to start? No?
Andrea.
Andrea? Okay. Andrea, who's David Tausig, by the way?
David Tausig, we are a public finance consulting firm, been in business, this is our 30th year.
Where's he from?
Orange County,
Where's he from before that?
New York.
I was wondering, because my mother's maiden name is Tausig, and there's not very many of them. I was wondering.
Okay.
You could be related.
Could be.
Okay.
I'll ask him.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me today. My name's Andrea Ress with David Tausig and Associates, and as I just mentioned, we're a public finance consulting firm. We work with local agencies, helping them to find ways to pay for public infrastructure and public services. So I'm very happy that you're here today, learning about the important issues that are facing our local agencies and how to pay for their stormwater and urban runoff programs. As we've heard, local agencies are facing increasing regulatory requirements for their stormwater in terms of their MS4 permits, in terms of TMDLs. So those are increasing. We've also heard that their costs are increasing. At the same time, stormwater really doesn't have a single dedicated funding source like we see for some of the other public improvements. And this is for both facilities and for the ongoing operations and maintenance. I've been asked to focus today on funding mechanisms within the current legislative framework. Obviously, as we heard earlier, Proposition 218 is a major impediment to funding stormwater programs. And as we heard before, Prop 218, there's voting requirements for most types of fees and charges. Majority, 50% majority of the landowners or a 2/3 vote of the registered voters. However, as we heard, water, sewer, and trash fees are exempt from those voting requirements, have a much more simplified process where they only need to have a protest hearing, public notification and a protest hearing. And that's really key.
That's the problem.
I'm going to talk about several new and emerging funding mechanisms and then some others that are interesting and may need some more work. The first is the Enhanced Infrastructure Financing District. This was approved last year in Senate Bill 628.
I told them.
And it's similar to redevelopment, which you're all familiar with, under an Enhanced Infrastructure Financing District, or EIFD. The public agency can receive the incremental growth in the tax revenues, or what we call the tax increment, from those local agencies that are willing to contribute. It's a little bit different than redevelopment in that schools' money is off the table, so the total revenue may be less, but the jurisdictions can be flexible. They can be formed by cities and counties, and the boundaries are flexible. You could tailor them perhaps to match a watershed. The good news is there's no vote required to form an EIFD. However, if you're going to sell bonds, you do need a 55% vote. However, without a vote, the revenue could be used directly to pay for facilities.
Hey, can I just quickly, on this EIFD thing?
Yes.
One, does it crowd out other things like low-income housing and other things that we want to use the increment for?
Well, absolutely, and that is one of the obstacles with this, is it's not a new revenue source. It's public agencies directing a share of tax money that they would have received otherwise.
Second question is, can they use revenue bonds instead of full faith and credit GO bonds?
I believe that they could. It's a revenue stream that
And if they had a revenue bond, they wouldn't require a vote of the people, would they?
I believe, I'm not a lawyer, but I believe under this legislation, if you're going to sell bonds off the revenue, that you would need a vote of the people.
I don't think so.
Tax if you use the property tax increment.
If you're using the tax increment revenue from this.
No, but a revenue bond is not when you're
It's not a
using.
revenue bond, it's a tax increment.
It would be a tax
I know, but
increment.
could one of these EFDs use a
You
revenue
should
bond?
be able to.
That's all the question is. You
I
don't,
think you would, I don't know that.
Just
Okay.
have to have a dedicated revenue stream
Right.
to an existing
what I think.
fee or an
Counties can
approved
agree
fee.
on a revenue stream and then use that to bond. Yeah.
yeah.
You have to present it to the 55% vote.
And we've seen recently, I know that the city of LA, it was in the LA Times recently, that they are proposing to use an EIFD for improvements along the LA River. But as we mentioned, some of the obstacles with this mechanism is it's designed just for infrastructure, so it doesn't help with ongoing operation and maintenance. The revenue, as we talked about, is not new revenue. And for other types of agencies other than a city and county, they can't form an EIFD. However, they can allocate revenues and presumably can receive benefit from some of the facilities. The next item that I want to talk about, and we heard mention of it already this afternoon as well, is AB 2403, which was also approved last year broadened the definition of water so that certain stormwater activities can be funded with the same exemption that we see for water, sewer, and trash, with simply the majority protest process. This is based on the Griffith court case where the court determined that a groundwater augmentation charge where stormwater was diverted for infiltration, that counted as a fee for water service. And so it was subject to the water portion of Prop 218 rather than the other requirements. And AB 2403 codified this by adding to the definition of water in Prop 218 to say that it would be water from any source. So obviously this makes it much easier for local agencies to secure funding for projects that either recharge groundwater through infiltration or provide for direct use of stormwater in lieu of other water sources. And this is similar, as was mentioned earlier. We've seen this for a while under Prop 218. If you can tie, like you're on Irvine Ranch, the overwatering, you can tie it to the water bill. You can tie trash, litter pickup that falls off of the trash trucks and go into the storm drains. You know, this is just a broadening of that use of that exemption.
So is it okay for me to ask a quick question? So there seem to be a lot of people from the various kind of city and county agencies that are concerned that they've been losing some of these cases, that the language of the Constitution has not been read broadly enough in Article 13D to really include all the kinds of stormwater improvement projects.
Well, certainly water quality, and this is not a full exemption for all types of stormwater projects where, you know, the traditional stormwater is collected in a channel and discharged out into the ocean. That's drainage. That's not going to fit into any of these exemptions. Or, you know, managing just flood control or the environmental purposes, the stormwater, again, those don't fall into these exemptions. So there's still, you know, there's been a number of attempts to amend the Constitution to add stormwater as its own separate category. That's failed numerous times. But the folks
So because the water ends up in the ocean, that's considered inadequately connected to the.
So it needs to be water adding to water supply. So stormwater that's captured, infiltrated, made into the water supply, that counts as water service. Other activities don't. There were other court cases where you're correct that stormwater charges were found not to be exempt.
But most stormwater projects involve a significant component of most stormwater projects is adding to the water supply, right? Or is there?
You know, I think I would say that that's not true. I mean,
Okay.
a lot of stormwater projects is cleaning up, is water quality, is moving water, but it's not necessarily adding to the water supply. And that is a drawback. You know, a number of agencies I spoke recently, the EPA had a series of seminars on stormwater funding, and a number of agencies, the question was, I can't do this. Due to my geography, I really can't infiltrate. I can't find a way to turn this stormwater into water supply. So how does this benefit me?
Or maybe the point is from the last panel that maybe what I just said is going to be more of the future, that this is where we have to go. And that the message of the last panel, and perhaps Senator Hertzberg, is that within 25 years, we will be collecting significantly more. Maybe all this work will fix the constitutional problem in and of itself.
That is possible, and I have a slide on monetizing captured stormwater that we'll get to in a second as well. My next item was PACE financing, and this is property assessed clean energy. Here in California, this is being implemented both under AB 811 and SB 555. It allows private property owners to finance improvements, water quality or water conservation, energy efficiency, and renewable energy improvements on their property through a voluntary contractual assessment that they pay back on their property tax bill. So this, while there's a number of significant interest in this, on the commercial side, primarily for business owners to install on-site retention or other improvements that could reduce runoff and improve water quality in the area. It's not an overall solution for local agencies because it's really not adding new funding to them, but by enabling, individual property owners to make improvements that reduce the burden on the system, that obviously it helps out local agencies. My next slide was on monetizing captured stormwater. Obviously, that's been a tremendous focus today. I think we are seeing.
Do you have any data on that? What's been done to do that, to monetize it? I mean, beyond the general description of the concept, do you have any examples in California, or could you further provide this committee with examples or other things that you've seen? I suspect being in your business, this is what you're doing a lot of.
There are significant challenges to this in terms of legally who owns the water. Do I have the right to capture, treat, infiltrate, and sell? Because the monetization part isn't just capturing it and putting it in the ground and letting it go and the next agency downstream can pull it out or somebody else. I mean, monetization is you're putting it in there, you're a park or a school and you're sticking it in the ground and you're gonna sell it to the retail water agency as a money-making proposition. And there's legal impediments there. Who owns the water? Water rights is way more complicated.
Are you a banker?
I'm not a banker, no. So there's issues there. Obviously, we heard, the water quality liability issues. Stormwater is intermittent. How would you track it? I think it's an idea that we're going to be hearing a lot more of, but there's just, at this point, it's too early. It's not really happening here, but it's something that I think we're going to be hearing more about in the future because we're
I just want to order real quickly, but could we do this in LA County? Could we do this? I mean, you're capturing a tremendous, you gotta turn your mic on. This is Gary, Hildebrand, can we do this in Kelly County? I mean, if you measure what you capture in broad terms and then cut a deal with Met and sell the water to Met, that's a financeable contract that you can revenue bond on. Do you think is that something in the scheme of things that's even in the realm of possibilities?
Well, we were already financing our stormwater capture projects in a way that isn't quite what you've described, but what we have in LA County is we're fortunate that most all the groundwater basins are adjudicated. So those that have the rights to the groundwater are already known. So the approach that we've taken in financing the expansion of our stormwater capture projects, and I'll go over that in a little more detail when it reaches my
I just want
my
to tie it into
presentation.
this monetization thing.
The groundwater recharge facilities that we have as we go through and spend monies to expand their capability, we actually work with the local water agencies that have rights to the groundwater. Because if we're going to take one of our projects, our spreading basins, and expand the ability to capture water, say by 1,000 acre-feet per year, and put that in the ground, well, that's a benefit to those that have the rights to the groundwater.
Right. Okay.
And they know the cost for that.
Quickly on public-private partnerships and open up, any questions, got anything, Stone?
Sure, public-private partnership. So in the traditional sense, this is a public project on public land that is built and operated by a private entity. Typically, it's paid for through a
Any
revenue.
examples that you know of that exist in
stream.
California?
Not on stormwater. It's done toll roads, convention centers. I've seen it. I think UC used it for student
But you haven't seen
housing.
a stormwater context yet.
I haven't seen it on stormwater. Back in 1996, Government Code 5956 enables this, but really it's made for revenue generating facilities, and stormwater at this point, isn't. And when you get the private sector involved, they're not doing it in general from the goodness of their hearts. They'll invest, but they need a payback, and so you really need a revenue stream. And so without a good dedicated revenue stream, it's hard to get the private that private investment.
Great. Mr. Majority Leader, any questions?
No, sir. Thank you.
I had a list over here, a memo you sent me. Mr. Santa Monica? Any thoughts?
Lots of thoughts.
Senator Bell?
Power plants,
Power
they
plants.
buy water.
Power plants, they
They
buy
can do
water.
private partnerships.
No, they have a revenue stream. I mean, we see revenue bonds, we see it on sewer, water treatment, anything that's
Well, look,
revenue
you know, it
generating.
sounds like this just hasn't, it's a situation where really what it boils down to from a public policy perspective is that we've never really considered stormwater as a source. And now because we're up to our eyeballs in drought and we're dying, right? The environmentalists were belly aching because they say this is horrible and all this stuff's happening. Everybody ignored them. There was no sources. Now there's an opportunity to turn this into something real. We look at the numbers and there's staggering opportunities in terms of dealing with the water supply problem. And the point that was made earlier is cost. And now the cost has an opportunity. When Metropolitan Water is just selling their water that they wheel in from the Colorado River at $1,000 an acre foot, right? You don't have to have a lot of those capitalists who want to make a lot of money for the public to get a lot cheaper water from this source. And that's really, it really seems that the real opportunity from this committee, this joint committee effort, I think, is to really take a different kind of a look. And I think that's the purpose of this oversight, is to look at this in a way that says there really is a state opportunity. And maybe we can and provide incentives and enhancements and ways to kind of jumpstart this process, partly to untangle the noise of all the agencies that are fighting for the small piece of cheese, and partly by just trying to have a larger framework to bring in new capital, because the big capital issue, you guys, from my point of view, is we have to be smart about this, because every dollar we want to put here doesn't mean we have money for foster care or for preschool or for doctors or whatever, and this seems to me to be something that's sustainable if we are really put our minds to it, to really solve a big problem, reduce costs to folks, clean up the environment, because the cost of water is so high and the opportunity here are so great that we haven't really engaged before. Can I turn it over to Esther?